What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show. I'm joined by Mark Haverlick. I'm Pascal Pryor. And Mark, we have a packed episode today. This might be our busiest episode yet since we've started this whole podcast thing. We got the Stanley Cup Finals. We got to talk about that. There's been a fair bit of trades and players on the move, whether it's re-signing, players being bought out, even just picks being traded. We saw like less than an hour ago with San Jose. And then we have the draft that we got to talk about, and we have UFAs or free agency that we got to talk about too. So it's going to be an absolutely packed episode here. But before we get into all that, how you doing, man?
Not too bad, dude. Obviously a little bit disappointed. Hockey has come to an end for the season. That's always not great for the night times and figuring out what to watch. But I mean, pretty entertaining Stanley Cup Finals considering like how it started, obviously, right? And I'm just like looking back on that, just happy we had a really good final this year. Yeah, just transitioning to the summer. My mind is still in like the whole hockey mode, right? Just because it's ending so late this year, and we're flipping right over to like buyout window, awards, draft. You said it all, right? So I mean, still totally in the hockey mode. I love this time of year though, dude, especially when you got our teams got top picks this year too, and speculating who we're gonna get. And yeah, man, I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain.
See, honestly, I'm liking how it is set up right now with the draft right after these Stanley Cup Finals, because it's not like in like NFL or some of these other sports, like you have to wait like a month and a half, and then the draft comes around. It's like you're sort of forgotten about, like it's sort of in the middle of like between the season ending and the season starting up next, and it's like in the middle of your like whatever other season you like to watch. So I sort of like it where it's like this, where it's like just like keeps on going, even though the actual like hockey games are done. There's still a lot of news and action and stuff coming from around the league. And then as soon as like the draft and free agency's done, it's going to start to slow down for the summer. But let's get right into the Stanley Cup Finals. The Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup for the first time in their team history after beating the Edmonton Oilers 2-1 in Game 7. Connor McDavid was awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP, and he became only the second skater in NHL history to win the award in a losing effort. So he became the sixth player in total in NHL, and the other four were goalies. And McDavid's the second skater ever to win it.
Hasn't happened since 2003 either. And when Giguère lost to the Devils in the finals. It's been 21 years, dude. But I mean, much deserved for him, dude. You see, he had every single first place vote except for one. And then the one he had a second place vote. I think the one writer had Bob as number one.
Yeah, he had Bob. I'm pretty sure it was an ESPN writer.
No doubt, though, throughout the entire playoffs, like he was the best player. Especially even like what he was able to just accomplish in the finals, dude. Like people are saying, oh, he got 8 points in 2 games. Well, he got it when the season was on the line twice, dude. It's like really the most, and people are saying he's a no-show in game 6 and 7. Well, he showed up the other games when his team was on the line. They could have got swept. They could have lost in 5, right? But you got to give credit like to that whole Oilers team. Like before we talk about the Panthers for a bit, for clawing their way all the way back, dude. Like they, as much as the Panthers probably, they might admit it, they might not. Like they were on their heels, dude. Like probably once that series even hit 3, maybe once it's 3-1, it's like, okay, you know what? But once it's 3-2, dude, and going back to Edmonton, like they were probably shitting themselves a little bit. Like, let's be honest, even probably heading into that game 7, since Edmonton, they won one of those games in Florida too, right? So the home ice definitely helps. Really good game 7 though, dude. I obviously kind of like more low eventful, but you expect that with the defenses, right? Like Florida, that I don't know, was that just like a 3-game flunk for them in the finals? Because the game 7, they look like themselves, right? Like the one thing I was saying, I was watching the game with Farzi, is it wasn't overly physical. I think teams were just really trying to not, especially the Panthers, like take that dumb, stupid penalty to get Edmonton on the board. But I honestly, all the credit to the Panthers, man. It's hard, dude. Imagine like being up 3-0, you lose 3 in a row, and it's like you're thinking, holy crap, like we just lost last year, and we just had a 3-0 lead trying to end this thing, and now we're going into game 7 at home, and we might lose again. Like, you know what I mean? Like all the pressure was on them. They came out to perform. Even though obviously McDavid gets the MVP, they had some guys that performed really well. Like Bob turned it around. Barkov was great all playoffs. Forsling as well. But like, what was your opinion like on the entire series and game 7 itself?
I thought overall, like when you look at the entire series, game 1 to 7, it was a phenomenal series. Probably one of the best I think we've had in recent years, to be honest. Like those first 3 games were sort of Bombers, like game one, you had the Bob stealing the game. It was a good game. Like Bob played amazing. It was fun watching just that goaltender performance and how good he was, especially at that time and like the narratives that there were. Because going into the finals, it was like it wasn't unanimous almost that McDavid was going to win the Conn Smythe, right? There was a lot of talk for Barkov. There was a lot of talk for Bob winning it. Bob steals game one, putting up the shutout, and it's like, oh my God, like Florida looks good. Is Bob going to be the Conn Smythe, right? And then game one and two go by. You're like going into game four, you're like, man, this series, like we all thought it was over, dude. Like we all thought
As
it was
much as
over.
like it might not have been a sweep, it was like, well, this series is still over, like regardless if it ends tonight or in five. You know what I mean? I get it. I totally get exactly what you're saying. Like there wasn't much hope for Edmonton heading into game four.
Yeah, and like at that point, we all were like, yeah, hopefully Edmonton can maybe win one or two and just keep the season going for a couple extra games. Maybe we can get a couple extra games out of this. Who would have thought though that going into game four, Edmonton was going to come out and have that performance, putting up 8 goals on Bob, dude? The way he looked the first 3 games in the series, as soon as the Oilers did that, I think there was a lot more hope for fans and that were cheering for Edmonton, thinking that like maybe they could come back. Like for instance, Jesse Polk from Bar Down, right? Like I remember he tweeted out though after game four, if he said that if Edmonton wins game five, I see it going to game seven and Edmonton winning and doing the impossible, coming back from down 3-0. Of course, they didn't do that, but they still got to a game seven, which who at the time could have been sitting there saying that they thought Edmonton would force game seven based on how the first 3 games went? Because like I sure as hell was not saying that I saw game seven after that.
No, I didn't either. Even after the game four win, I was like, honestly, I think the Panthers are just going to rebound and come out strong and potentially end this thing. But dude, like let's not pretend like game seven couldn't have went either way either, dude.
It
Like
was it was
McDavid's
so
got the
close.
puck in front of the net. He loses it. Hyman fans on his backhand. Dude, that's a tie game. Would have ended up going to overtime, and you never know what would happen, right? So that's just the way the game is, though, right? But Edmonton, like I honestly like as much as they went down 3-0, like there was at times earlier in that series where they were probably the better team for points. Like game one, dude,
Yeah,
they were the better team. They got robbed. Even in game three, I felt like they were down 4-1 head into the third, remember? And they came back and lost 4-3. Well, dude, they outplayed Florida in the first. Florida scored 3 goals in 5 minutes in the second period. And Edmonton was this close to tying that game and making it a 2-1 series. Like, you know what I mean? And then they obviously play well for a longer stretch, like in games 4 to 6, right? And even in game seven, they didn't play bad at all. I thought they
I thought the third
I thought
period
it was just a
was
good game, dude. I like
yeah.
it was just back and forth. That was like the second period. I turned to Farzy and I'm like, dude, like this is just a good game right now. It's like a team's getting hemmed in for a minute and then like they'll get the puck out and then it'll happen on the other side. You know what I mean? That's exactly what you want to see. I just really felt though after that Reinhardt goal, dude, that like there was no other goals coming. Like to me, that almost felt like it was an overtime winner. Like in my head, I was like, I think this is it. Like the way this game's going, like they're not giving up much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when it was 1-1 there, you knew whatever teams that was going to score next was just going to try to shut things down. And that's literally exactly what Florida did with the help of Bob. Like, Bob made some spectacular saves there in the third period. Like,
He
the
was
one that,
back in his zone for game seven, dude.
pardon me?
He was back in his zone for game
Oh,
seven.
yeah.
Like you could tell.
Yeah, you could tell for sure that going into that game, like, he had the confidence. But yeah, like, for me, Edmonton, where they just sort of lost out in the series was game one getting goalied. Like, that doesn't help that you get goalied, but that's sort of like, I don't want to say that's out of their control because, like, at the end of the day, if you put a couple past Bob, you can win that game. But when you have a all-time performance like Bob had in game one, like it's sort of hard to do anything there. But for me, game seven, dude, like the biggest thing I noticed was just towards the end of the game, Edmonton's big guys were just so burnt out,
Gassed.
dude. Like you could tell that McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, Bouchard, they were running on fumes, man. And it's like maybe you have a bit more depth in that Edmonton lineup. Are they feeling that fatigue toward the end of game seven? Can they maybe find a goal there if they're not feeling that fatigue? Like, who knows? But for me, that's just a one area where I look at Edmonton and say like that's a one area where I really feel it did hurt them particularly in Game 7 and towards the end of the series. It was just that having that depth to rely on.
I agree with that, and I think too, right? Like the first period of Game 7, there was a couple penalties, right? So I saw McDavid only played like 720, and by the end of the game, he was up to over 25 minutes. So
He
he's
probably played the
basically from
last
the second
720 of the
period
game.
on. Basically from the second period on, he was playing like once every 2 minutes, like you know what I mean, like a
Yeah.
minute out of every 2 minutes. So I mean that's got to be exhausting. Like you could just tell in that last minute. I think that what sucked was that they were on the. Did you see they were on the ice for a lot in the last 5 minutes, and then they went off, and there was like 2 minutes left, and I was like, dude, they need a fucking whistle so bad, and then just
Yeah,
call a timeout, and then get those guys back on, and then it was another like 30 seconds or so when they went offside, and then they took the timeout, and they were still gassed. So like it was honestly just unfortunate timing too for them. One guy I just want to like kind of give it like a shout out to in this series because there was a lot of doubters, and I thought he played pretty well was Stuart Skinner, man.
oh
Like, I
yeah, he
mean,
played
I don't think
phenomenal.
there was really like at any point in this series where I think he costed them. And I feel like that was a lot of the talk going into this series is that you've got this Hall of Fame goalie on the other side who's got experience, and then you've got this guy who's like lost his job for a couple games earlier in these playoffs. But dude, I thought he was solid. Like honestly, all series long, maybe game two, I think there was a couple goals that he maybe could have had. But man, he was phenomenal, especially like starting that comeback, dude. And it's like game 7, yeah, should he have saved Reinhardt's shot? Probably. But it's like, man, he still let in two. He gave them chances to win that hockey game. Can't blame him at all. He's still a really young goalie. And man, if you're an Oilers fan, you got to be happy that you found like this homegrown kid, dude. Like he's from Edmonton. Like I would have no worries about him wanting to leave or anything like that. It's like once this bridge deal's up for him, I would try to lock him in as long as possible. Maybe not 8 years, but it's like I'd probably look around like the 6x6 range for him. I like,
Yeah,
dude, he brought your team all the way to the Cup Finals, man. Like, and he even like rebounded his game after he started terrible this year. You know what I mean? And he's still what 24, 25 years old. Like,
only his
this is
second
your
full
guy for
season
the
in the
future.
NHL.
This is your guy for the future, right? So, and he's accomplished a lot already. So, I mean, I just wanted to give him a shout out, dude. I thought I didn't really expect him to play as well as he did. Like, I will be in that group of people that maybe I didn't rip him, but like I didn't really think he could do it. But I think he played well enough to win this series. I really do. But I think he just got outplayed a little bit by Bob.
I completely agree with you. I think he got outplayed a bit at times by Bob. I think honestly, if you look at the entire series, you
He
can
may
make
have
an
been the more
argument.
consistent goalie.
Yeah, he was probably the more consistent goalie. Like if Bob doesn't have that game, if Bob doesn't have that game one, like we're probably saying that Skinner was easily the better goalie in this series. But I feel like when Bob was good, he was amazing, and when he wasn't the best, like you could really tell. Where with Skinner, he was consistent the entire series. He made the saves that you needed. Maybe there was a couple goals in that series that he wishes a little bit that he could have had back. But when you're playing 7 games in the playoffs and you're towards the end of your season, every goal is going to want a couple shots there that you're going to
Oh,
want
for
back
for
at some
sure,
point,
dude.
right? Like we Bob's going to want a couple that he wants back as well. So it goes both ways. But I completely agree with you that the Oilers should look into re-signing him as soon as he comes off this bridge deal, especially considering how much the cap we think it's going to go up in these over the next however many years. Like if you can get this guy locked in on a good AAV, that's really going to help out. And maybe Edmonton has a bit more spending money to go and get some more depth pieces to help out in this lineup. Because for me, the depth just isn't there right now. The interesting thing with the Oilers, though, if we want to keep on talking about them, is they have sort of come out now and said that they're not going to be extending Ken Holland, who is the is he I think he's GM right now. He's not president. He's GM of the Oilers. So he's not going to be staying
Yeah.
with the Oilers. It's completely the Oilers not wanting to extend him. I like we sort of all saw this coming all year, not gonna lie. Like we were talking about this earlier on this year when they were on that losing streak. Like, do you fire Holland? And the whole thing was like he's gone at the end of the year anyways. So it's like, I don't know. But like for me, it's just more interesting that it's you have a GM that got his team to the Stanley Cup Finals and the team's not bringing him back. What do you think about that whole like situation with him and the Oilers though?
Yeah, it's kind of like tough, like a situation in the sense that like I really don't believe that he's done his job to like that great over the past couple years. But I mean, they almost hit the pinnacle a couple days ago, right? So,
Yeah.
but I heard there was some interest that, or like not interest, but it was partially like his side, like he might not want to come back. So, has it fully been out that it's like the Oilers are just not renewing him and they're going another path? Because I saw, regardless, he wasn't going to take part in the draft. I saw that, so I didn't really know exactly what was going on. He is older, right? Um, it depends who he gets replaced with, dude, because it's hard to say like this is a good move for them because he hasn't done a whole lot recently. But I mean, if he gets, they've had GMs that are worse than him in the past, right? Like Peter Chiarelli, like
Yeah. Oh, Shirley was
so.
awful.
So I don't know, man. Like it's tough. Like they have a lot of free agents right now, like coming up UFAs. Like they can extend Draisaitl after July 1st. Like McDavid's the year after. They could do it with him, right?
Bouchard's
But
pretty
they're
soon
like,
as well.
dude, you have to decide the next 48 hours if you're gonna buy out Jack Campbell. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know, dude. Like it's kind of hard to say whether this is the right decision now because I don't really know who's the replacement. But I mean, you just hope that the replacement is actually going to come in and like fill some needs. Because, dude, we were talking about the Stanley Cup Finals about like how like Nurse and Cece are like two of their better defensemen, dude. Like he still didn't do
Yeah.
anything to address that, dude. Like I feel like it's crazy to say, but like, dude, if they had a better defenseman, who knows if they would have won the cup? Like, and I know that's like teams are in different stages where it's like some teams would be dying to be in this position right now in the cup finals, but it's like when you have like two of the best players in the world, dude, like I feel like they just didn't do enough to surround them. Still, like it's
Yeah.
gotten better over the years. Like I'm not gonna like sit here and say like they like nothing's happened. Like Hyman's been a great addition. Like Kane obviously wasn't as much this year, but like he's been pretty good over the past couple years. Like even Ekholm, dude, like that's a good trade, right? But like I still feel like they had more like problems that like weren't figured out. You know what I
You're
mean?
spending for me, what it comes down to is you're spending $14 million on Darnell Nurse and Jack Campbell combined. $14
Yeah, like
million.
that's a couple solid players that you could add to your lineup, right? Like and potentially even like another like I don't know if they would look for another top pairing defenseman because I think they like Ekholm Bouchard, but like you get another top four solid defenseman, dude. Like that
Yeah.
could be the difference
Yep.
this year of like going out and getting like Brett Pesce and like you know what I mean, or like Matt Roy or like you know what I mean, like something like that who could really help your team, right?
And I do have the full tweet in front of me that the Oilers put out about the whole thing. So it's hashtag Oilers CEO of hockey operations Jeff Jackson has released a statement regarding president of hockey operations and general manager Ken Holland. And then sort of when you read the statement, it says that the Oilers will not be extending Ken Holland. So who knows if a bit of that is like on Holland's side, but it does sound like the Oilers just didn't really want to have him back.
I wonder if it has like anything to do with like I wonder if Holland has like a sort of vision for like the short term and maybe like the owner doesn't agree with it or something, you know what I mean? And they just think it's better to like part ways at this point, you know what I mean? Like kind of thanks for like what you've done and helping us get here, but like you know what I mean? It's not really gonna work out. So I don't know, man. I'm curious to know if he's gonna be done or not, or he's gonna join another team. Probably not as a GM, but I mean in some role, right?
I see. I think a lot of it has to do with the whole Jeff Jackson thing because Jeff Jackson now, who's the Oilers' head of hockey ops, he was Connor McDavid's former agent, right? And they brought him in earlier this year, so I think Jeff Jackson wants to really start to like build out that team with his personnel, and I just honestly think that Ken Holland wasn't isn't really
Isn't really
that guy for Jeff Jackson. I guess like similar to the
that's
whole
fair
like
enough.
Kyle Dubas thing in in Toronto when he got hired, like the first thing he wanted to do was bring in his own coach. I feel like Jeff Jackson, one of the first things he wants to do is bring in his own general manager to work alongside, right? But it was just an interesting one for me because I don't really remember any time that we've ever had a general manager lead his team to the Stanley Cup Finals and then is possibly without a job going into the next season. I can't literally can't name name one guy
No,
that could have happened to.
I know, but I'm not really convinced it's like the worst thing ever though. Like
Oh no.
I really don't. Like if he got like a 3-year extension right now, I'd be like almost like, oh boy,
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't know.
like are they gonna like get back to her? Like you know what I mean? Like I don't know.
So over the Stanley Cup Finals, we had some trades at funny times too, with the whole Linus Allmark trade getting announced like an hour before Game 7 of the Stanley
Oh, I
Cup Finals.
loved it, dude.
I love that one. I think we should move on and talk about some trades and player movement that has happened over the last couple days and even the past week or so. So we'll start off with the Pierre-Luc Dubois and Darcy Kemper one. The LA Kings and Washington Capitals have gotten the trade season kicked off with a 1-for-1 trade. The Capitals are getting Pierre-Luc Dubois, while the Kings are bringing in Darcy Kemper. Honestly, I sort of like this trade for both sides. Like I don't really think there's a winner or loser here. I think it's a pretty even trade. What do you think about it though?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to like pick a winner or loser right now because both these guys are coming off pretty bad seasons, right? Um, I think with the Kings, dude, like I maybe give them the slight edge because they opened up a little bit over $3 million in cap, and the length of the contract is a lot less, right?
Yeah.
So, but then the thing is, it's like you're committed to this guy being your starting goalie for the next 3 seasons. And I really like Darcy Kemper, dude. I've actually been a very supportive of him, but I will say that last season was his worst season in the NHL by far. Like it wasn't even close, dude. If you look at his career stats, you'd probably be surprised to see how well he actually played in Arizona. And there was a reason why Colorado wanted him and traded for him. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Um, Even the year before this past year, he was okay with the Caps. I think he had like a 909, but Lindgren just kind of took that job from him this year. I think it's more Lindgren's younger. He makes less. They probably think he's got the potential to be a full starting goalie. And they kind of lack down the center position now with Kuznetsov gone. Backstrom's basically retired. And they don't mind bringing in this contract. See, the thing is why I don't hate it for the Caps is because they're in this mode where it's weird, right? They made the playoffs, but they're almost like not good enough to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
And over time, they're going to be getting some contracts off the books that I just think that $8.5 million for PLD is like not the biggest deal in the world on Washington. Like, I
The
don't
other
know.
thing,
It's different on LA, right? Like, you're trying to get Doughty and Kopitar another cup. Like, okay, Ovi, it's like, yeah, he'd like another cup, but let's be real. LA's a lot better of a team than Washington, in my opinion, at least. And they're
yeah.
a lot closer to winning a cup than Washington is, right? So I don't know. I don't really mind it that much for the Caps, but I mean, I think LA just wins because it's more of like this needed to happen where they get this money off the books. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's hard to
I think
explain.
I think LA sort of wins the deal a tiny bit here, just based off the fact that they're getting their number one goalie, which is what they really needed when you look at this last season. Like Cam, and like the other thing is if you're not trading for a goalie this year, the UFA goaltender market really is not that it's not
You're
that
not getting a
spectacular.
starting goalie in free agency.
Yeah, so you sort of got to make a trade this year. In LA, they could have gone out and made a trade for a bigger guy, but I think they just didn't want to really give up those assets. Because if they were getting one of those bigger guys, like maybe you're having to get rid of like a Brant Clark in that trade, right? But they managed to get rid of the $8 million PLD contract, bring in their number one goalie, and save some money. The only the thing that I like though for the Capitals is what you said. Like they're in this sort of weird zone where they're not going into a full on rebuild yet because you have Ovi there, but they're not really that great of a team. So they're sort of in that like middle ground where they're not good enough and they're not committing to that rebuild. They're just gonna sort of be what they are for the next couple of years. And it's like you're not getting good enough draft picks with that where you're making your team better right away while Ovi's still there, right? So you're getting PLD and yeah, like he had a bad year last year, but if he can get back to like a 65 to 75 point guy, it's I think you're happy with that if you're Washington, you know. If you can get back to being like a 2C, I'd be happy with that trade if I'm Washington. You know, it's like you're losing Darcy Kemper, who doesn't fit in the plan of this Washington team, for a guy who
Yeah.
still has the potential to make a decent impact in the NHL.
The one thing I wondered too with it is that, like, the thing is, I don't know Dubois. Like, it doesn't even seem like he's much like I don't ever hear anything that he's like a problem in the dressing room. Like, you know what I mean? I just wondered if like not that he wasn't motivated in LA, but like the sense of like he knows he's not the 1C because it's Kopitar's job. And even though like they probably want him to be that eventually there, but in Washington, it's like Dylan Strome's a really good player, dude, but like Dubois' best is probably better than Dylan Strome. So it's like
Yeah,
I wonder if he gets really motivated in Washington and it's like I can take this job. Like I can be that guy feeding Ovi. Like, you know what I mean? Like instead of Dylan Strome. Right now I'd probably take Strome, but it's like I think Dubois' best is better than what Strome is, right? So I really wonder if that is like going to be a huge like motivating factor for him at all. I don't know, right? Like I don't know the guy, but it's like it's different situations, right? He was okay in Columbus, but they wanted him to be that guy. Winnipeg, it's like Scheifele was there, but at times, like I don't know, Dubois looked better. Like but you
yeah.
go to LA, it's like their guy's Kopitar, right? Like he's the two-way shutdown guy. He's putting up as many points as PLD, if not more, even on a good year, right? So I don't know. Like it's just a theory, right? But I just wonder if that has anything to do with it for him, you know?
I could definitely see that, and I'm hoping that him going and playing alongside Ovi sort of brings him back to life because I like him as a player. Like as you said, we haven't heard anything where it's like he's a troublesome guy in the locker room or anything like that. You know, he's got a bad mentality or whatever. So it's like I want to cheer for them to succeed, and hopefully this trade can sort of happen for him. And even Darcy Kemper going to LA. Hopefully Darcy Kemper can sort of get back to what he was on Colorado and when he signed with the
Caps, yeah.
Washington Capitals and get back to that real true number one goalie. Let's move on to some more goalie trades here. Jacob Markstrom, he got traded. Calgary Flames traded goaltender Jacob Markstrom to the New Jersey Devils for defenseman Kevin Ball and a 2025 first round pick. The Flames are also retaining 31.25% of Markstrom's salary. Markstrom has 2 years left, making $6 million a year. So the Flames will be picking up
It's like
whatever 30.
1.9.
Yeah.
It's like 1.9 a year, which isn't too bad.
Honestly, like,
What do you think, dude? You're the Flames fan. That people want to know your opinion.
dude, like you have all these people, man. Like for me, it's the casuals that are pissing me off, bro. Like I'm gonna rip some fucking people here, but it's like, dude, like I understand like the haul back for Markstrom wasn't a lot, but it's like you when I feel like when a lot of the people that are really complaining about that like aren't actually like looking at the whole details. So this July 1st and next July 1st, Markstrom has two bonuses that need to be paid, right? Who are those bonuses paid for or paid by? Not the Calgary Flames. New Jersey Devils are going to have to pay those bonuses. So it's like right there. That's part of why you're not getting as much of a haul back. It's because you got to pay him $2.5 million the next two July 1st, which the Calgary Flames have not done as of yet in this contract, right? The other thing
Yeah.
is, dude, the guy's 34. Like the guy's 34. The way regression works, which is like a scientific thing. It's going to happen at some point. Is that next season, dude? Like literally next season, Jacob Markstrom could be completely awful, and it's like, well, yeah, the guy's 35, man. Like he's getting old, you know. It's
Yeah.
the other thing too is like when you look at deals that have happened for goaltenders over the age of 30 in the NHL, like this is like one of the biggest returns that has happened for a goaltender over the age of 30, right?
Yeah. There's
It's
only
like,
been a couple guys that have gone for like, oh yeah, well yeah. I wasn't even considering the age of 30 either. Like I was more just thinking like when Freddie Anderson got traded to the Leafs, but I mean he was
yeah.
way younger, right? And that was still just like a first round pick, I think.
Well, dude, he was like in his prime with like 4 or 5 years left of his prime, you know?
See, to be honest, I haven't really seen too much like hate over this trade. That's actually interesting that like you say
Dude,
that.
I saw a lot when it first came out, man. I
But
was
my
honestly
thing is
surprised.
like what are these people like expecting more? Like what did they want? Like more picks or like prospects or like roster player from New Jersey? Like, see, I don't really get that because it's like he's 34. He's proven that he's a really good goalie. I will be honest, I don't think he's the most consistent at times, but I think his best is like up there with some of the best in the league.
Yeah.
It could be better him playing on a better team with better defense now once they're fully healthy. Hamilton's back, you know. I just don't really get it. Like dude, you got a first round pick for a 34-year-old plus a young defenseman
Yeah. 23
who
year old
I will say
defenseman.
probably doesn't have like the most potential in the world, but dude, I could see Kevin Ball being a really fucking solid number 5 defenseman who's huge. He's physical. It's exactly what you need on your team. Honestly, you ain't got shit in your system like that right now besides him.
Dude, like I honestly like this trade, man. We're getting a first round pick, and as you mentioned, a young defenseman who can play in our lineup next season. Like Kevin Ball is going to be in our lineup next season, so it's not like we got to go and spend money to bring in a defenseman to eat some minutes next year. Like you're getting a 23-year-old guy who, as you mentioned, is probably going to be a very good number 5 defenseman. And the way he sort of plays in his body, he reminds me a little bit of Nikita Zadorov, who us Flames fan loved. Like the stuff I was seeing online though, like some people were saying like, oh, it should have been this year's first, which is
You're
where do
not
they
getting
pick this
this
year?
year's first.
It's 11th they pick, no? That the New
No,
Jersey picks this
10th,
year?
10th.
10th. Yeah, like we're not getting a 10th overall pick for a 35-year-old goalie making $6 million a year, 2 years left, and you got to pay
Well,
him 2 bonuses. Like it's not a
Well, the
reality.
thing is too is, dude, these people don't realize that you guys got more for Markstrom than Boston got for
Yeah,
Allmark,
I
and
know.
Allmark is 4 years younger, probably a better goalie, and he has less of a cap hit, and he won a Vezina a year and a half ago. So
Yep.
I don't know. I personally I don't really have any issue with this trade. The salary retainment makes sense for New Jersey wanting him at a lower cap hit for sure, because then now you got Markstrom and Jake Allen for like $6 million, dude. That's not a fucking bad tandem, to be quite honest with you. Like that tandem can get you in the playoffs,
Oh, for
I
sure.
think. Um, I like the Ball return. I did hear some stuff though. It's obviously just rumors, but apparently they're saying Conroy valued Ball more than Holtz, and that's why you got Ball instead of Holtz. I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if
it's
I buy
true.
that.
I don't know if I buy it either. People are saying they think that you guys went the D route because you already kind of have a lot of wingers in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Coronado, Peltier, Zari might be the wing. I don't know, right? So
Ronick.
there's been
Oh,
no
Ronick.
actual like confirmation on that. Friedman did say something about it, but he said he's had no like that's not like 100% true. Honestly, I think it would suck a bit if that's actually true though, because I think you'd prefer Holtz. But I mean,
Yeah.
Ball is solid, dude. I honestly didn't even think he'd ever like make the NHL. I just thought he'd be like one of these huge defensemen who like can't skate, has no hands. But dude, he's got a decent shot. He's got some pretty good hands. He's a big physical guy. I think if you give him a couple more years and you don't give up on him, he'll be looked at as like not like a force in this league, but you'd be like, holy shit, like a lot of teams would be interested in this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy with the turn. Like, yeah, Holtz would have been nice, but honestly, dude, I think it's more that New Jersey didn't want to give up Holtz in that deal.
Probably not, right? He's a
Like,
top 10 pick a couple of years ago. Like, they probably don't want to give up on him yet. Because Ruff didn't really like playing him that much either, right? So now with Keefe, maybe he gives him a bit more opportunity. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, for sure, I could see him getting some more opportunity in that lineup. Let's move on and talk about the Linus Allmark trade though, because this one I do think is a little bit ugly. The Boston Bruins traded goaltender Linus Allmark to the Ottawa Senators for Boston's original 2024, pardon me, first round pick. So it's this year's first round pick. It's number 25 overall. They got Jonas Korpisalo back and a depth centerman, Mark Kastelik. And the Senators are basically retaining 25% of Korpisalo's salary. So it's
$1 million a year.
yeah, it's not like you're eating the whole salary if you're Boston. I do I think Boston got sort of fleeced here to be honest.
Yeah, I think so
I
too.
I sort of see like I for me I sort of see why they got fleeced though, dude. Like they waited too long, man. Like if you're Boston, you should trade you
Do you
trade
think they
Allmark.
do you think it should have been like done before the off season, like
Oh,
during the
dude,
year, or it was like they waited too long into this off season?
they should have traded him at the trade deadline, man. Like
I
trading him
wonder
now.
just like what like options they had though with his no trade, right? And a team that like really wanted a goalie right away. That's the only thing I wonder. But I mean,
Well,
yeah,
and the other thing I heard too, Friedman was talking about this on their podcast. He was saying that you like with the no move clause or the no trade clause, whatever 20 teams it is, it can change year to year, right? So Allmarks is due on July 1st, and what he was saying that he had heard was that Ottawa was not on Allmark's no trade clause, but there was some rumors from around the league that come July 1st,
he could be.
maybe Allmark puts it on because
Yeah.
he's hearing the rumors to Ottawa, right? So I feel like Boston just got fucking squeezed in this scenario, man. Like they waited, they waited till it was a bad time to trade him. I feel like Ottawa's
But dude,
really
it's
the
just
only team
nuts to me
interested.
that like there was no other interest. Like, dude, he's a solid goalie, dude. Like, I know Swayman took his job in the playoffs, but like, dude, you have like two top 10 goalies in the league on the same team. He's been
Yeah,
like one of the most consistent goalies in the league over the past 5 seasons. If you look at his save percentage, goals against average, he's played on one of the worst teams in the league. He's played on one of the best teams in the league. And that's the thing what people are like, oh, he's going to Ottawa now after playing on Boston with good defense. Yeah. Bro, did you forget he was drafted and he played for the Buffalo Sabres for 4 fucking seasons, dude? Like he knows what it's like to not really have great defense around him. That's why I kind of respect him as a goalie a lot. Is some goalies can't play in situations where they're either on a bad team and get exposed, but some guys that are on bad teams go to good teams and they're not even as good because they don't face as much shots. Like you know what I mean? It's kind of weird, man. It's like a whole mental thing for a goalie. But with Allmark, he's done it both. So it's not like I'm guaranteeing he's going to be a stud for the Sens, but it's like, dude, he's had experience in both of these situations, right? And it's an awesome move for the Sens, dude. Like they haven't had a goalie like this since like probably fucking Craig Anderson's prime or like
yeah,
even before that, dude. Like, and I'm not even sure if Craig Anderson was ever as good as Linus Ullmark, to be quite honest with you. So for them to get Corpusalo off the books, though, dude, like I was hearing about this rumor to Ottawa like a week before it happened. I was told that Forsberg was going the other way the whole time. He's got 1 year left on his deal, 2.75, good backup for Swayman. Why is Boston taking on a goalie at $3 million a year for 4 more years when you're about to give a fucking blank check to Jeremy Swayman basically for an 8 year contract? And I think the thing that's crazy too, dude, is like we've been talking about what do these guys need? They need a fucking centerman. They didn't get a centerman in this deal, and the worst part is they only freed up $2 million, dude.
yeah,
Like
and
if they're looking to go out and get Elias Lindholm, it's like you only freed up $2 million, man. Like it doesn't really do anything. Like this trade makes no sense to me because that first round pick, dude, should have literally just been to get rid of Corpusalo's contract, in my opinion.
oh yeah,
You want to take the contract for 4 years? Here's a first. But they got that for that and a guy who just won the fucking Vesna and a depth forward. Okay. Oh my God. Big deal. I don't get this trade for Boston, dude. It makes no sense. Ottawa, absolute fleece, in my opinion. That's the thing that's weird to me, dude. It's like, okay, yeah, they could have got more for Allmark, and I guess they were squeezed a bit. But my thing is the whole Corpusalo thing, too, dude. Like, they should have got more assets just to take the contract on. He was one of the worst goalies in the NHL last year,
dude.
Corpusalo.
Honestly, the way I think it sort of played out here, dude, was that like Ottawa was Ottawa pretty much told Boston what they were gonna do, and if you're Boston, it's like you either do that, you don't make the trade, and then you sort of see if you can work something out later in the summer with Allmark. But like at that point, like everybody's already made their moves, right? Like the other thing we talk about is like we already talked about Markstrom that he got dealt and Kemper that he got dealt, right? Like two of the teams that we were like are looking for goalies. A couple days before Allmark gets traded, already went out and made their moves for goalies. So it's like you don't really have the teams there fully like going after Allmark. And then the team come July 1st, the teams that probably still are like would be interested. Allmark's probably putting them on their no move clause. So do I think
Right.
Boston just I think Boston was dealt two aces here and just waited way too fucking long to play him, man. Like,
Yeah.
like,
I think this I just think honestly, dude, it's like the worst part to me is just the Corpusalo part. Like
yeah,
that's the
it
thing where I
is.
don't think it makes sense for Boston. It's like, dude, if you wanted to give the 25th overall for Allmark, it's like, okay, like yeah, you're probably squeezed, whatever. But like I don't know, dude. Just to take on a backup goalie at 3 mil for 4 more years that like has been really inconsistent and like was bad last year is just odd to me. You're probably right though. Like Ottawa probably was like, dude, like we want to keep Forsberg. He played with Allmark and Moto in Sweden like
Yeah,
8 years ago, dude. They were goalie partners. Like they know each other. That's probably a one. I'd say probably a reason why like Allmark was like felt more comfortable going there too, dude. Like you know what I mean? Like he knows the guy. Like so I don't know. Ottawa probably said that too. They're probably like, well, we prefer to give you Corpusalo. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah. The other thing too I was seeing with this trade that they were talking about on 32 Thoughts too is that it's not a sign and trade either, right? So like you're getting him for a year essentially. Like you're
Yeah,
like all
unless
you
he
know
just
right
he
now.
wants to re-sign at any point. But I mean, he probably just wants to try it out first, right? And not lock himself in, and then it ends up being a bad
Yeah.
situation.
Well, that's
I
what that,
that though, dude. Like I don't know. Like some guys when they get traded and sign like an extension right away without even playing, I always am like, well, like yeah, you could chase the money, but it's like, what if it's just like not a good fit, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Like this is like Allmark's
yeah.
like he's on like his stretch now where it's like you probably want to get a cup. Like he's turning 31, right? So it's like I don't know. I kind of respect that he's right away. He's just not like, okay, like he's not ruling it out though, right? He's not like I'm testing free agency. It's just like we're gonna see how
Yeah,
this
he's gonna.
goes, and you never know, dude, right?
No, I completely respect him for that. Let's move on to the Vancouver Canucks and some news that came out today with them. They've announced that they've re-signed Dakota Joshua to a 4-year, $13 million contract. It holds an AAV of $3.25 million a year. Joshua had 32 points in 63 games in the regular season, and in the playoffs, he had 8 points in 13 games, helping lead to some of the success that the Canucks had there in the postseason. Honestly, dude, I like this contract for the Canucks in the postseason, man. Like watching Dakota Joshua play, I really liked what I was seeing from him. He looked like he's a great depth piece, dude. He's a great middle of the lineup type of player to have. He plays physical, he plays hard, dude. I really like how he plays. I think getting him at 3.25 for $4 million is honestly sort of a bargain. I'm not saying this guy should be making a whole lot more, but if you can have this type of guy in your lineup for 4 years, especially the way the cap's going up, like you're gonna love what you're getting from him. The only thing though I think this sort of means now for the Canucks is that there's no way Elias Lindholm is coming back, right?
No, I don't think so. I'm not even convinced Sidorov's back either after Hronik re-signing.
Yeah. Honestly though, like what do you make of this whole Dakota Joshua contract though?
I can't lie. The first time I looked at it, I was kind of shocked. Like I do disagree with you to be quite honest. I don't want to say that I don't think he's a good player and a great depth guy, but I'm not convinced a good depth player should be making 3.25 million on a 4 year deal. That's just my opinion. I get the style he plays you really like. He was really good in the playoffs, but with the Canucks, dude, I just look back to some of the contracts they've signed in the past. I know it's a different GM, but this just kind of screams that for me that it's like they almost haven't learned from like spending money on July 1st, dude. Really? Like it's just like, dude, he had 32 points in 63 games. Like it's about half a point a game. Okay. He performed in the playoffs. Like I thought even if he hit the market, he wasn't getting over like 2.5. That's just my opinion, dude. Like I thought he was looking at like a 2.5 by 3, maybe a 3 by 3 at most. And I would be very I was like, if he gets 3 by 3, I'd be a bit nervous.
See,
I
like,
don't know, just say he could get better, right?
yeah.
Like, but I don't know, dude. It's just like I hate when they get paid and it's like one good season, dude. And I get it. He hasn't had a lot of a sample size and whatever, but I don't know, dude. I just think like with the Canucks, it's like, dude, like they spent money on Ilya Mikheyev a couple of years ago. Well, where the fuck's that now, dude? They just traded him away, like because the contract's too bad. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. I get he's going to UFA and there's going to be a lot of teams after him, but in my opinion, I think it's a little bit much. I would have probably preferred him at around like 2.5 by 4.
See, the reason I like the deal so much is because it's the 4 years, so you're getting them when the cap's going up, right? So it's like maybe next year it is a little high, but like by the time you're in the third and fourth season of this, when the cap's at like 100 million, like I think they're gonna be
If
laughing
it
then.
does, dude, but like still even, dude, it's like when McKayev signed, like the cap was like $6 million less than it is now, and it's like his contract's still a problem. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Dude, I
Like,
also
I get it. Like,
yeah.
and I'm not like that. Like I don't think this is like a terrible contract. I just it's a little bit much for my liking, though. I guess. Like, I feel like I just would have preferred him at a bit less, but I mean, he it seems like he probably would have gotten this in free agency. I guess. Like,
Honestly, dude, I think just the way he performed in the playoffs, man, like somebody probably would have come along and paid him. Let's
no,
let's
that's fair enough.
yeah. Let's move on to the draft though, because draft is we're recording Thursday, so draft's tomorrow night, Friday night, and this is going to be a really interesting draft to be honest. Like, there's so much that could happen. We know who's going one. Macklin Celebrini is going one, but the draft it's going to start at two because I don't think anybody knows who's going at two. I don't even think Chicago knows yet. Maybe who they're taking at two. To be honest, dude. Mark, you're the sort of prospects insider here though on this podcast. So I got a couple questions here to get the blood flowing on this podcast and for the draft. So let's
Sounds
start
good,
off.
buddy.
Who are your top five prospects and sort of like in order in this year's
Like, do
draft?
you so like before I answer this, like, do you want me to go on like need for team or like what I think they should pick, or just like legit the top five prospects in order? Like if like we didn't even know the top five teams yet.
Yeah, straight up, who are the best five? Like, who are the best five players in
Okay.
this draft?
So yeah, Celebrini at one is like there's really no doubt, and there hasn't been a doubt most of the year. I think he's probably stepping into the San Jose Sharks next year and playing in the top six. To be honest, if he's not going back to school and making a pretty good impact right away. At two, dude, I love Ivan Demidov. I was talking about him earlier in the year on this podcast. Um, Now that it seems like he's spending 1 year outside of the NHL too, and then going to come over, I think that's going to be a huge luxury if Chicago ends up taking him at two or wherever he ends up going. Such a good playmaker, dude. Like, and honestly, like he can score as well. Like he was playing in the lower Russian league this year, putting up 2 points a game. Could have played in the KHL. It did for a little bit, but I mean, probably better for his development that he went down, to be honest, because the KHL doesn't give a crap. You know what I mean? He probably would have been buried
Yeah,
on the fourth line or whatever. At number three, honestly, no change from earlier in the year. This Artem Levshinov guy, dude, I really like him. Like 6'2", 190. He's got a heck of a shot, physical, plays defense, kind of like your all-around defenseman. There's a lot of good D in this draft, dude, but I think that as of now, if we're looking 5, 6 years down the line, like I think he'll probably be the best one. At four, I'd probably go with Lindstrom in Medicine Hat. Huge centerman, dude, scores goals, missed about half the season, though, with an injury. He didn't take part of some of the combine, too, because of that. I wonder if that's going to scare teams away a little bit. But I think based on talent, his size, and I think just what he brings, his potential is like a first line center in the
yeah,
future. At five, it's hard. Like you're saying, this draft, it's really tough for you could have a guy rank 3 and he's going to go 10. Like it's actually crazy of how different this draft is than others. I just think for the offensive upside of it coming from the back end, I would go with Zane Parekh. I just think
dude, I
that
love that kid.
I think his defensive skill is underrated. I wouldn't say it's as good as some other guys in this draft, like Lev or Dickinson, but it's the fact that he's not a defensive liability. He scored 33 goals as a defenseman in 66 games, 96 points. I think he was the first defenseman in OHL history that was draft eligible to score over 30 goals. I just think alone you're looking at a guy potentially that could have an impact like Erik Karlsson.
Yeah.
To be honest, that as of now looks even better defensively than Erik Karlsson at this age. I'm not convinced he's going to go that high, though. I just think that you're asking me based on pure talent alone. I think that he's probably the number five.
Okay, so another thing is like when we talk about drafts, dude, a lot of the thing we talk about is like you sort of have like the tiers of players. So it's like for me, I think like Celebrini's that first tier all by himself right now. I think like the second tier is sort of that um Demidov, Levshunov, and Lidstrom. And then I feel like the third tier sort of is sort of that 5 through like
Honestly, like,
10,
dude, like,
11, 12, even later than that
yeah,
maybe. But it's like
dude, seriously.
do you agree there though, where it's like the sort of tiers? Do you think Celebrini's by himself? Then you have that Levshunov, Demidov, and Lidstrom in that sort of second tier, and then or is there anybody like else that you would add to like
Like
the second tier?
it's kind of hard. Like I've thought about this, and I would say it's like Celebrini. I'd say Demidov, Levshunov, but then it's almost like I don't know if like Lindstrom's on that tier, but I also think that he's like above like
Yeah.
Parekh and even Catton and even like a Ginla and even like Zeev Buyum or Dickinson. It's like I don't know. It's like Lindstrom right now to me has like almost his own tier.
No, I completely agree with you there. Like I think when you talk about Levshunov and Demidov, you're talking about two future probably star players in the league. Where when you talk about Lidstrom, I think it's more that I think part of the reason I sort of he's in that like in between tier is because his I feel like his floor is not as high as what Demidov and Levshunov's floor is, right? Like I feel like
Yeah.
Demidov's floor is a second line second line
Mhm.
scoring type of player. Like Levshunov's floor is probably like a number
Honestly,
three
probably like a top
defenseman.
3, 4 defenseman, dude. Like, yeah,
Yeah, where it's like Lidstrom, like if you talk about Lidstrom, his ceiling is probably about the same as what their ceilings are, but his floor is probably like feel like his floor is a bit lower, where his floor is like
a third line center or
third line
something.
center, maybe, you know? I
Yeah.
feel like that's part of the reason why he's sort of in that in between tier where he's not with the two Russians, but he's not like as low or not as low because Ginla and Zeev and all those guys are still super great players, but he's not in that other tier with them. So I agree with you there. Um, who are some underrated prospects on your in your opinion? Like who are some guys that have not gotten enough love that you think are really good players?
I know you're probably not gonna like this one that much, but like I'd say like Berkeley Catton, dude, in the WHL. I know like you're not
Yeah.
that keen on like the Flames taking him high, but I think like his point total, the fact that he had like, or the fact that he had like 50 plus goals in the WHL in his draft year. The thing is with him is he's a little bit undersized, right? So it really just depends on where teams really want to take him or decide to take him. Another guy too, dude, is like Kivaharu. I think like I know he missed most of the year with an injury, but like a couple of years ago we were talking about that guy like going first overall, maybe right. He's a very skilled offensive defenseman. Honestly, I don't know if you're gonna like this one either, dude. But I think Cole Hudson, man, like he's not even really ranked in the first round for a lot of people, and I think he's no doubt skill wise a first rounder in this year's draft.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with him though, dude. Undersized defenseman, but I don't know, man. Some of these undersized defensemen can really play, right? So I think it's almost worth the risk. You saw Lane, like he dropped all the way to 62, dude. Like it's nuts, man. Like I thought he should have been a first rounder at the time as well. I don't know, like the rest of the guys, I think that are probably rated pretty well. I think one guy that probably doesn't get a lot of love though is Trevor Connolly, plays in the USHL, I think for Tri City.
Yeah.
He's had a little bit of off ice issues in the past. I think it was a couple years ago. Something happened. I forget exactly. So I don't know if teams are kind of like shying away from him because of that, but he is so skilled, dude. Like I think like if his attitude is figured out, like he can probably be a really big impact player in the league. And I think he's probably not going till like between like until like 13 to 20.
So on the other hand, who are some players that you think are like completely overrated?
Honestly, the first guy I think just because of like projections is Silyalev. I know I gave him a lot of love earlier in the year, but like after watching him a lot more, I kind of like realized that he's solid and he's got some potential, but I don't think he's got like nearly as much potential as some of the other guys near the top of this draft, even like defenseman, dude. It's the fact that he's 6'7", dude. Like he can skate really well. Um, he's pretty physical for the most part, but it's like, dude, a lot of comparisons to him are like Nikita Zadorov, who's a very good player, but it's like, you think the Ducks are going to be satisfied with taking Nikita Zadorov third overall?
I don't think any team would be, to be honest.
Like, you know what? Do you know what I'm saying, dude? It's like,
Yeah.
it's not that I don't think that this guy can be a good, impactful NHL player. It's just like, I don't see the offensive upside in him whatsoever. And dude, he could be a part of a cup winning team at that size, physicality. Apparently, like half his offseason, he just fucking boxes. Like, he's like obsessed with that. So it's like, I think he's going to come into the league and probably be a physical force. But it's like, Zadorov's a physical force and he's not a threat offensively. So it's like, I don't know, man. If you're picking that high, dude, I would want a defenseman that can do it at both ends of the ice. Like, I'm not taking a
Yeah.
defensive defenseman at number 3 or even in the top 5, I would say, to be quite honest. I would prefer 100% to swing at a guy like Zane Parekh or Zeev Buium, who's got that offensive upside and can skate really well. You know what I mean? I think it's Silulev, it's the height thing and the fact that he can move well. Like, if you watch him, you'd be like, holy shit, like he's 6'7", like he could skate really well. But I mean, the fact is, it's not everything anymore. And it's like, I'd probably put him in the top 10 to like 12. But it's like the fact that I see him going like 3, 4, like 6, I'm like, holy, I think there's a lot better options than him there, especially
Yeah.
even on defense. Like, it's not like it's just like forwards around him, right? Like, bro, there's 6D in this draft that I think that can be like huge impactful players in the future. Like, we might be looking back on this draft and being like, this is one of the best D drafts in a while.
No, I agree with you on thinking he's a bit overrated. Like some of the comparisons I saw was like his ceiling is Zdeno Chara, where it's like his floor is, as you said, like his floor could be Zadorov. But that might not even be his floor. Like his floor maybe is even just like
Not like a
like
in
a
and out of the
five,
lineup guy.
yeah, like in
Like,
and out of the lineup type of guy. It's like, and I think he's the biggest question mark there too, where it's like, what is his ceiling for? Like, what is he most likely going to be in the NHL? Where it's like, I feel like some of these other guys, it's not as big of a question mark of like what their impact would be like in the NHL.
in
Um,
accordance to like other like overrated prospects, I don't know. It's kind of hard because like the top like 15, 16, I would say is like usually like, it's probably around the same group of guys, I would say. It's just that everyone's got all these guys in different orders, really, right?
yeah,
So like it's not like anyone else I really think in the top 15-ish is kind of overrated in the sense. And like later in the first round, I don't know, man. Like I don't. It's hard to tell because I think it's such a tier down from like all these guys at the top that it's like I'm not even really sure what I guess like their full potential could be. It's almost like I think a lot of these guys in the beginning could be like very impactful, like top 6 forwards, top 4 defensemen, and then after that, it's like you're probably looking at guys that are like even at the end of the first round where it's like their ceiling is probably like a really good like middle of the lineup guy, right?
yeah.
So it's like I don't even know if I have an answer for that, like as in accordance to like another overrated prospect, I would say. It's just such a different draft, dude. The one thing I think is gonna be a huge wild card in this draft, though, too, is like the goalies. Like there's like no set guy that I really think is like guaranteed gonna be the first guy off the board. There's a couple guys in the O that might go high. Carter George on Owen Sound and Ryerson Leanders on Mississauga. Like those guys have been like rumored to be like a couple of the first goalies off the board this year. And then there's a couple like European guys, but there's no like I honestly don't think you're snagging like a Jacob Fowler from this draft or like you know what I mean, or even someone like a
Yeah.
Trey Augustine or like a Kosa, a Wallstead, or a Skarov. Like obviously those guys are more first round picks and no one's projected in the first round, but I don't know. Like I don't see it in this year's draft, dude. I think like if we're looking back at this in 2030, we're gonna be like there might be a couple guys that are like either in the league or like fringe in the league, but there's going to be like no guy that's going to like blow you away. Like he's a starting goalie now, right? You never know, right? Goalies development, it's all about their development path. So I don't really know, but I'm not really a lot very high on like I'm not keen on Montreal taking a goalie this year, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. The goalies from what I've seen this year is there's nothing really there that really you're really going to be reaching for a guy or trying to take a guy early just to get your hands on him. But who
Like
knows,
last
man?
year's draft, dude, a couple goalies went in the second round, and then like a bunch of guys started going, and then like Fowler just happened to be there at the beginning of the third round, right? Like it
Yeah,
was just weird. It was like guys were reaching for goalies in the second round. Once one fell, it was like okay, they got to keep going. But now it's like, I'm not even convinced the goalie's going in the top 2 rounds, to be honest. Like, I think it might be third round. We might start seeing a goalie off the board.
Yeah, from the one thing I was looking at the other day, it was like the top 50 players in this draft, and I don't think there was one goalie on the list. I think the highest goalie was like 60s or 70s, somewhere around there. I have one more question before we wrap up the podcast for today. Who are some players in this draft that you think could like rise or fall? I guess like in this year's draft, it's sort of gonna be a hard one to answer with like how close
The
this third
rankings are.
yeah, with how close the rankings are. But is there anybody you think like you like some of the underrated guys you mentioned earlier, like a Cole Hudson, for instance, who's projected to go? Like, is there anybody like that you could see going first round and making like a massive jump up or no?
I don't know if it'd be like more like jumping from round to round, but I think like a Ginla on a lot of boards is like top 10 to like 12 ish. Like I could probably see him going closer to like top 5, to be honest. Like I think someone might like take him around there, and I think he's probably skilled enough. Like, yeah, it is hard, right? Because a lot of guys have guys in different places in the draft, but I guess just going off like my own, like I think Perrick is dropping. I think
He's
Booyam's drop.
dropping, eh?
Like I think he's going closer to like I think he's possibly available for you at 9.
If Parrish available at 9, we get him, dude. I'm gonna fucking nut my pants watching the draft.
I think there's
Saying that right
like
now.
I heard Montreal's got a lot of interest in Booyam, but I feel like if they don't take him, like he could be dropping too. I think Dickinson is a riser. I think a lot of teams are just going to be interested in him because of his two-way game and that he's pretty mature and like is probably like besides Levshinov, I would say the most NHL ready. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? I'd say Perrick's got a higher ceiling, but I mean Dickinson might be more ready right now than Perrick is. So I could see Dickinson maybe like rising a little bit. Like Cole Hudson, I don't really think he's going in the first round, to be honest. I think, but it's like he's not even really like a guy who's falling to me because it's like he's not really rated there by a lot of people, right?
yeah.
Um, have you heard of the Steen Solberg guy? This defenseman, he's a Norwegian guy. Remember, I was
No.
talking about the other Norwegian player in this draft, Brandon Nygaard?
Yeah, yeah.
Dude, it's actually to the point this Solberg guy was like ranked in the third round earlier this year, and he might be going like top 15. So there's
Really?
two Norwegian guys that dude, I would like bet my mortgage that they're both going first round, like first round for sure. I think now, I think there's a lot of
Okay.
interest for this kid now. He's really good. Kind of cool to see two Norwegians though, like go possibly first round.
I don't think
You want to grow
we've
the game,
definitely
right? So,
and we've definitely never seen that two Norwegians going first round. If we have, I'd be
well, dude, like Zuccarello is like a fucking god there, dude, because he plays in the
yeah,
NHL. Like they don't have much talent in hockey, right? So I mean, I think he's kind of like a riser, I would say. There's a defenseman who plays at the development program named EJ Emery.
yep. I've seen
He's
him.
more of like a defensive defenseman, so I don't think he's gonna go like really high, but like he's kind of went from like the 50s to like probably anywhere between like 18 to like the end of the first round. I think he's jumped a lot. Like, dude, I think like honestly, like if I was the Leafs dude, like I'd be looking at this kid hard because I
Yeah,
think he could be ready to play in a couple of years, and he's a right-handed shooting defensive defenseman who blew a lot of people away at the combine this year. He won a bunch like of like fastest times for like 40-meter dash, and even I think he had like the most pull-ups or something like that too. So honestly, they're just like a really physical guy too, right? So I don't know. I think he could be a riser. For dropping, honestly, that Brandon Nygaard kid might drop a little bit. I don't think he's really been as good recently. Um, but besides that, yeah, I don't know. Like I'd just be surprised if like the top 15 isn't like at least the group of players that like I thought it would be. Like, you know what I mean? If it was like I had a guy ranked 25 and he went like 12th, I'd probably be surprised. But
yeah,
like if I had a guy ranked like 14th and he went like 7th, like I wouldn't be like that shocked. Like, you know what I mean? Just knowing how wide open this draft is this year. So that's why it's gonna be so hard to judge, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna be hard. Like if we come back on this podcast and you're like, who won the first round? It's like, dude, I don't know.
yeah.
Like I really don't. I'm not gonna be able to tell you, dude. Like right now, like it's almost so close that it's too hard to tell. But then you're gonna look back in a couple of years and like I guarantee you, those top 15, like not all of them are gonna be in the NHL.
Yeah,
Like you know
you're
what I
gonna look.
mean?
I feel like we're gonna look back in like 5, 10 years and be like, oh, like how did this guy fall to 9 when it's like pick 5 5, 6, 7 was this, like, oh my gosh. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like we're
Or
gonna be
he was
saying
picked at
stuff like
five
that.
and look at he was picked at five and look at 6, 7, 8. It
Yeah, it's
better
just
not be
stuff.
that way because Montreal's got five.
It's gonna be that way then, I guess. Yeah, I think this draft is definitely gonna be a fun one to watch because there's so much unknowns going into this draft, which is like a lot of the times in drafts, a lot of the stuff you sort of know going into it. I I think we covered a lot though this
I
podcast.
want to bring up one more thing that you didn't bring up, and it's not confirmed. But what are your thoughts on Michkov coming over? Probably his
Good,
contract is getting terminated in Russia. There was
good.
there was obviously it was good. They were thinking 3 years until he comes, but it's different now, dude. Like, do you think Montreal and these other teams are regretting this pick now, or what do you think it's going to matter till he plays NHL games? What do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say regret it because it's like when you look back at the time, it's like you didn't know this was gonna happen, right? It's like like at the time Montreal's thinking like best case scenario we get him in 3 years. Worst case scenario, this guy pulls a Cutter Gauthier and doesn't play with it, doesn't play with us whatsoever, right? So it's like
Yeah,
I think some teams might be like, oh, like maybe we could have been good with him, but I feel like a lot of teams are still pretty happy with what they got. And the other thing too is like he hasn't proven anything in the NHL either, right? It's like this guy could come over and
yeah,
this guy could come over and be a complete bust next year, right? This guy could come over like pull an Alex Galchenyuk and say some stuff in an Uber, right? Like
yeah.
you never know what's gonna happen. So I'd say until we're like 10 years down the road and these players are like pretty safe as what they like are, then I think at that point it's like easier to look back and be like, oh, Montreal messed up not taking him there. But I think at this point it's too hard. But I do like that he's coming over, man. I think like you don't want to see the best hockey players in the world not playing in the best league in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like if this guy's 22, 23 years old, lighting up the KHL, like pulling a Kirill Kaprizov and he comes over and he's automatically like a top 25 player in the NHL, like it sort of sucks because you're missing out on a guy's like the start of the guy's journey, right? You're missing out on his younger years in the NHL. So I love that he's coming over to be honest.
I'm so interested to see how he's going to work with Torts, to be
Oh,
honest with
dude.
you. But for the Flyers, dude, I think he's going to be a special player. Like, it
Yeah.
might not happen right away, and there could be some growing pains with it. But I think if you give this kid some time, he's going to be a huge force for the Flyers, dude.
Yeah, I do like him a lot. I know I didn't mention bust with his name, and I do want to say I don't think he will be a bust because I don't want the hate online. But I do think he'll be a special player. Like I don't know who a comp for him is, to be honest. Like maybe like a Kucherov. I feel like
Kinda, yeah. Like with less playmaking, probably more scoring. Even
yeah,
though I know Cooch scores a lot, but I mean, Mitch Cobb's main thing is a shot, right? And
maybe Kaprizov then. Like
kinda, honestly, it's weird. Demidov's almost like he has a very familiar skill set to Kaprizov, Demidov. Honestly, I'd say Kucherov, dude.
yeah, it's it's definitely gonna be fun to watch him come over here next year. But yeah, I think today was a great podcast. So it's gonna be a longer one if you're listening in. We talked about a lot on here. We're gonna not talk about free agency now, because if we talk about free agency, that's gonna be another half an hour to an hour added to the podcast. So I think we'll talk about that next week. Next week we'll be talking about recapping the draft. We'll be talking about free agency, sort of the rumors and who signed at that point. So still a decent bit more news to come out here as we move forward into the early parts of the NHL offseason and beginning of our summers. But for everybody tuning in this episode, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.